Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My purpose here is just to say a few words because it's an old friend who's come back to give us a second session with him. Mr. Musharraf is known to all of you. He has spoken to us before. And I'm very happy he's here and he is sparing the time to talk to us. One thing that I've been always impressed by Mr. Musharraf's CV is that he did English literature, both at first degree level and master's level. A few months back, a very well-established investment banker, a Britisher, passed through Singapore, and he was interviewed by Business Times, and I think by Vikram Khanna. And Vikram, he also had majored in English literature. And Vikram Khanna asked him, what is the relevance of your basic training to what you're doing? He said, a great deal. He said, what literature does to you is to teach you the basic fact, one basic fact, that a question can have more than one answer. The hard sciences always tell you this is this, 2 and 2 make 4, and that's it. Whereas literature will tell you, may not be 4, it may be something else, you know. So that helps me in my investment decisions, that I don't go by one answer. I look at various things. So maybe in being cabinet secretary, this also helps. 1 and 1 doesn't make 2 in the cabinet. So I did expect a sneer from the moderator on the conclusion. But anyway, I thought it is a... So one thing that is, talking about literature, maybe Mr. Musharraf, I could tell you that we had a session. I was told by someone that some of the construction workers, people who come here, construction, mainly from Bangladesh, in their spare time, they write poetry. So we decided that we will have a session and we will hear their poetry. So we organized a session in the National Library, and it was very well attended. 150, 200 people turned up, and 8 poets, all from Bangladesh, read their poems. And we had simultaneous translation on the screen. So it was a very, very successful event. It was a very touching event, because almost all of them had a very sad story to tell. Some of them had gone through college education and doing rather menial jobs in Singapore. But anyway, the thing is, literature, I have a very soft corner for literature, so your literature background seemed true. The other thing is, I always wondered, I've always been impressed. I've been dealing with South Asia half of my life. Been always impressed by the quality of the government offices of South Asia. I think man for man, they are as good as any that you get from anywhere in the developed world. So I always wondered why you have first world brains, but in terms of the standing of the countries or the economic performance of the countries, they are still third world. And I always wondered why this is. And one possible conclusion one could draw is that maybe the system, there's some flaw in the system that doesn't allow these very competent, very brainy people to perform as well as they can. And this brings to the subject that you're going to talk about, governance.
Yeah.
Reforms in governance and administration, I think would be a very interesting topic to be delivered by someone who knows the way the system works. And perhaps you can, in your talk, try to give me the answer, why is it that with first world brains, you don't produce a first world country? With that, I pass you on to Dr. Chowdhury, who is the moderator of the session. So,
Thank you, Chairman Pillay. I wholeheartedly endorse your point on English literature. In fact, our current finance minister, who was a very senior civil servant, actually 4 years senior to Mr. Berkey, so you can imagine how senior he is. He no seniority in terms of status,
not by age.
not by age, not at all. I mean, youngest of us all. So Mr. Mohit, who was alternate director of the Asian Bank, alternate director World Bank, finance secretary, finance minister for many, many years, was a student of English literature. And he argues that all knowledge is acquired through the English literature, and therefore that is key. I mean, economics and all that comes later, you see, but it is the English literature which is your conduit to knowledge and education. Anyway, we once again welcome Mr. Muhammad Musharraf Hussain, Cabinet Secretary, Bangladesh. Bangladesh is, as you must all be aware, a country of 160 to 165 million, the world's 7th largest country in terms of population. Once, rather unfairly, one thought Kissinger had described it as a basket case, but it is no longer so. The World Bank calls it the Bangladesh paradox. Despite manifold challenges, the progress that Bangladesh has achieved over the years has been remarkable. Bangladesh is perceived, I've been many years in the government and also representing the government abroad in multilateral fora, perceived abroad in multilateral fora as a thought leader. And if you think in terms of, say, microcredit, non-formal education, in terms of development paradigms, many of the tunes that the world marches to in Africa, Latin America, etc., were originally piped in Bangladesh. You hear of Bangladesh, you hear of tremendous political volatility at times, and yet the quiet work of governance continues. And it continues due to largely the credit for that is owed to this large number of public servants, civil servants, who are headed by Mr. Musharraf Hussain, the cabinet secretary, a dedicated band of civil servants. 1 million in number, actually, about 20,000 of whom are in managerial categories. Mr. Hussain is the ranking civil servant of the country. In our Westminster model, they are called the cabinet secretary. This is something that we derive from the British system. And this exists in most South Asian, or all South Asian countries, actually. The cabinet secretary in England is the real key to all flow of decisions emerging from cabinet discussions. In most of our countries, what a cabinet secretary does, and it's good for a student of governance to know, he or she provides assistance to ministers, handles major appointments, prepares the agenda for the cabinet, minutes the cabinet discussions, circulates those discussions, and ensures that cabinet decisions are implemented. In most countries, most South Asian countries, as in England, as in the UK, he also chairs the Committee of Civil Servants. In Britain, it's called the Permanent Secretaries Management Committee. In Bangladesh, it's called the Secretaries Conference. It's not just a committee, but it's a conference. In India, additionally, he chairs, and this is the name I was looking for, the Transaction of Business Rules Committee 1961. And that is an additional function that's given to the Indian cabinet secretary. You see, but I mean, and this is something that is unwritten. The cabinet secretary he's the conscience keeper of the public servants, and he plays a leadership role that is not necessarily documented. That is how he ensures in times of political turmoil that the governance flows smoothly within the governmental system. Now, Mr. Musharraf, as the chairman had said, has been a student of English literature. He's also studied in Curtin, Perth, and also Birmingham, England. He's held many, many important positions. During the time when we were in government, he was Secretary for External Relations, Economic Relations Division, which had the responsibility of negotiating all foreign assistance and allocating those within the system for utilization. It is to the credit of the ERD that Bangladesh's dependence and the role of the ERD has over the years diminished, and that is because of its own success. In other words, Bangladesh is no longer as dependent on foreign assistance as it was during our times. Anyway, so with these a few words, I shan't attempt to steal the speaker's thunder. Welcome once again. You have spoken to us before, and we would like to hear you again. And this is a subject that you can see by the attendance that interests us tremendously. So, Musharraf, the floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Chair, esteemed Chairman, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to thank ISAS, particularly its Chairman, Ambassador at Large, Mr. Gopinath Pillai, for inviting me to this esteemed institute once again and giving me an opportunity to share the experiences of Bangladesh in governance and administrative reforms with such distinguished group of people. It's also an opportunity to educate and update myself, because each intervention made by the learned participants induced me to think and sometimes to act. I'm happy to have with us here today Dr. Iftikhar Ahmed Chaudhary, who is going to chair this session. And as he mentioned, he was with the government of Bangladesh for a very long time, and I had the privilege to work with him directly when he was a member of the cabinet and I was secretary. Ladies and gentlemen, when I came here last year, I shared quite elaborately on the background information. This time I would like to be brief on this part of the presentation, I mean the background information, and I would like to focus more on the reform measures which would appear toward the end of the presentation, the later part. And I would like to leave more time on interactions, question and answers. In this connection, please allow me to remind you that I am a practitioner, not an academician, and I would like to speak basically from a practitioner's viewpoint. But I may take the academician's privilege to express occasionally my personal views, and of course these personal views are based on my long association with the government. And as the structure of the presentation, the civil service structure in Bangladesh, provisions of the Constitution of Bangladesh pertaining to civil service, overview of the organ of the state, then governance structure and Bangladesh economy, which I believe a case of resilience and inclusive growth. Then major challenges with regard to governance and administrative reforms, and how we responded to those challenges. Then I'll focus on a few specific measures. One is national integrity strategy, another is government performance management system, and the annual performance agreements, and finally my recommendations and concluding remarks. Then we'll, of course, open the, with permission of the chair, open the floor for interactions. We have similar systems in South Asia, in Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, even Sri Lanka. We have this cadre system. And because before that, Bangladesh was, we had been part of Pakistan, and we had a federal structure. So there are federal services and provincial services, but since independence, initially things were not much organized. That was only in 1980 when the civil service of Bangladesh was reorganized under 30 cadres. Now the number of cadres stand at 28 because previously judiciary was also part of civil service, BCA judicial. Now they are totally separate, it's a judicial service. And two cadres have been merged, the administrative cadre and the secretariat cadre. I believe in India and Pakistan still the secretariat cadre remain, but in Bangladesh it has been amalgamated with the administrative service. And these, in fact, officers at the managerial level are recruited through Public Service Commission, but promotion is an internal process. It's not, PSC doesn't have any role to play. And we have a career system, and in the public service, we have career training opportunities. Retirement age is now 59. It was 57 for many years. About 3 years back, it was made 59. And the total number of civil servants, civil employees, is about 1.5 million. Out of them, the BCS cadres make about 40,000 plus. 40,000 is quite big because the doctors, engineers, teachers at the government colleges are also part of the civil service. In fact, health is the biggest cadre in number, followed by education, and agriculture is number 3. But as you say, the number of cadre officers in the traditional generalist cadres will not exceed 20,000. Our constitution is quite elaborate, and it's mentioned in the constitution that every person in the service of the republic has a duty to strive at all times to serve the people. So the service orientation is embedded there in the constitution. Then president can make rules to regulate civil service until an act is passed by the parliament. Article 133 says that the parliament will make an act to regulate civil service. Until that time, the president will make rules. And until now, we are regulated by the rules made by the president, but as Civil Service Act is under process. The cabinet has approved the draft. Now this will go to the parliament. And there are provisions for administrative tribunals. There's provides some protection to the civil servants. And also it's mentioned in the constitution that civil servants are to be given opportunities to defend themselves before removal or reduction in rank. So that gives some sort of protection. PSC is not advised on promotion, but they are advised, they are consulted. They are consulted on several matters. For example, disciplinary actions, PSC is consulted. Then the organs of the state, like any modern democratic setup, we have the legislature, executive, and the judiciary, in line of the doctrine of separation of power. And we have a unitary structure. It's quite challenging because Bangladesh, as you mentioned, is a country of 165 million people by this one government in reality. Although in the constitution, there's a provision for strong local governments, but we are yet to make it happen. So, but there is no state government or provincial governments. It's run by just one government. It's a Westminster model parliamentary democracy. President is only the ceremonial head, and Prime Minister is the chief executive, run by the, and the government is in fact run by the cabinet, which is accountable to the parliament. In parliament, we have 300 open seats and 50 reserved seats for women. But we had about 20 women elected directly in the open seats. And currently, the Prime Minister, the Speaker, the Deputy Leader of the House, and Leader of the Opposition are all women. That reflects the power of women empowerment in Bangladesh. The Leader of the House, Leader of the Opposition in the past Parliament, the immediate past Parliament, was also a woman. We have a unique feature of parliamentary oversight functions. I know as we know, in many of the parliamentary systems, there are subject-based committees, parliamentary committees. But in Bangladesh, apart from the subject committees, like the Public Accounts Committee, there are ministry-wise standing committees. There are standing committees, parliament standing committees for each ministry. That makes the executive more accountable to the parliament. Supreme Court is independent and they control and supervise the subordinate courts. And there are some constitutional bodies like Election Commission, Public Service Commission, Comptroller Auditor General. Their authorities are given by the Constitution itself. And there are some other statutory commissions like the Anti-Corruption Commission, National Human Rights Commission, and the Information Commission. They are not constitutional bodies, but they are made under separate acts of the Parliament, which provide them with adequate authority and independence. In the executive organ of the state, we have ministries or divisions. If the ministry is too big, then we have more than one divisions, and meaning that there's a minister and each division has a secretary, permanent secretary. The ministries or divisions make policies, and these policies are implemented through the attached departments and often by the corporations or authorities and subordinate officers. And in Bangladesh, we have the field administration like India, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka. And in the absence of strong local government institutions, this field administration plays a very important role in service delivery and implementation of government policies at field levels. We have 7 administrative divisions. This division is different from the ministry or division. 7 administrative divisions, 64 districts, and 489 upazilas or sub-districts. We have local governments, although not very strong. We have district councils, 64 district councils. They are mostly rural, but they are also partly urban. Then we have sub-district councils, mostly rural, and union parishads, like parish councils of UK. They are more than 4,500 in number. And in urban areas, we have city corporations and municipalities. We have 11 city corporations now and 323 municipalities. A quick look at the economy of Bangladesh. The area is 147,000 square kilometer. Population, as I mentioned, is this data is a bit outdated. It should be about 165 billion now. And GDP is 172.88 billion US dollars. Agriculture makes 16% plus, industry 27% plus, and services sector 56% plus of the GDP. Per capita income is now 1,184 US dollars. For many years, we were considered a low-income country by the World Bank, but now we have been promoted to the status of low-income group, low-income country, lower middle-income country. This ranking is done by, as you know, all know, by the World Bank. The LDC is a UN concept, and this low-income group, lower middle-income group, high-income group is a World Bank concept. So recently, we have come to this position, and we have a vision to achieve a higher middle-income status by 2021. Growth rate is 6 plus annual growth rate, and steady growth, because for the last 8 to 10 years we have been growing at this rate. Inflation rate is 7.35%, which is quite tolerable. We are still an LDC country, but we hope to graduate by 2021. The graduation process is a bit longer. They are the main industries of Bangladesh: ready-made garments, agribusiness, jute, fishing, textiles, leather, pharmaceuticals, shipbuilding, software, and food processing. Among those, I believe ready-made garments, jute, these are very important for us, and pharmaceuticals, shipbuilding, and software have more prospects. These are growing industries. Exports are also similar. Ready-made garments, which make about 75% of our export income, and we stand second in the world in RMG exports. Apart from RMG, we have jute products, frozen food, leather goods, pharmaceuticals, and software. And the prospects of pharmaceuticals and software is very bright. Labor force is 60 million. Out of this, 45.2 is in agriculture, non-agriculture about 55. Unemployment rate is 4.3, it is quite low. Poverty, here we have made a big difference. In 1992, the percentage of poverty was 56.7. Now it's below 25%, it's 24.7. And with regard to extreme poverty, against 41.1 in 1992, now it is only 10.64. Bangladesh has already achieved MDG targets in gender parity in education and reducing child mortality rate, and already achieved. And in fact, at both at primary and secondary levels, girls outnumber boys, and it's quite an achievement in the context that for many years, many decades, Bangladesh was considered a very conservative society. So this the gender parity is quite impressive. The government has a Vision 2021, to make Bangladesh a middle-income country by that time, and also digital Bangladesh, comprehensive and effective use of ICT. And recently, Prime Minister has envisioned this of achieving developed country status by 2041. Now, as you mentioned, Bangladesh is a paradoxical. Bangladesh has a paradoxical situation. In some cases, we have some failures or lack of success. In some areas, we have made tremendous success. How these two things go together side by side is a big question. Now, I think there are a few factors that contributed towards this achievement. One is prudent macroeconomic policies. The macroeconomic policies has been steadily very prudent. Then there's a broad consensus on social sector development. The differences are more in the political front, how we identify ourselves as a nation, how we evaluate the contribution of the national leaders. These are, of course, very important from political perspective, and there are very strong differences of opinion, and that's often lead to confrontations in politics. This is one side. But on the other side, in social sector development, there's a broad consensus. It's health, education, women's empowerment, etc., poverty reduction. Then the mainstream political parties hold similar views on major economic policies. There's a role of the private sector and the other things. So in economic policies, this investment in infrastructure, investing in the in human development. So there's a underlying consensus. The other one, which I consider more important, you mentioned about the role of the public servants, but I believe the role of the people is more important. Our people are very resilient, particularly during calamities. Bangladesh is a disaster-prone country, so the resilience of people in dealing with calamities, and also the people of Bangladesh have the courage and the preparedness and willingness to work despite disturbances. Let's say, even there is a political, sort of disturbances, people continue to work in their respective sectors. This is, I think, a success factor. And also in Bangladesh, Bangladesh is a case of a strong partnership. Basically, partnership between the state institutions and the non-state institutions. And also more specifically speaking, partnerships with the NGO, the civil societies, even the development partners, and also the private sector. So this partnership has played a very instrumental role in our development. NGO, we have a very vibrant NGO community, and in some cases, NGOs work as implementing agents of the government. In some cases, NGOs come up with their own programs, and they are expected to align with the priorities set by the government. Now, what are the major challenges as I've identified? The core elements of governance being rule of law, human rights, transparency, accountability, integrity, responsiveness, participation, efficiency, and effectiveness. Now, what are the challenges? How to have all these things? One is how to institutionalize democracy and promoting democratic culture. Because, as I said, our constitution is quite elaborate. So many of the institutions are put in place by the constitution. Roles are defined, and this can be done in no time. But to give democracy an institutional shape is a time-consuming matter. And one parliament is not enough to ensure democracy. We probably need hundreds and thousands of democracies within the broader democratic framework. That takes time. And putting in place system and structure and process is easier, but developing the right kind of democratic culture is much more challenging. So this is a challenge of governance. Democratic culture encompassing, the tolerance, or listening to different stakeholders, building consensus, etc. That needs democratic culture. Then economic governance. When you speak about governance, normally we limit ourselves to the political part of governance. There's a tendency to ignore economic governance, which is I believe, equally important. Economic governance involving public financial management and project management. Project management is a big issue. And within the broader aspect of project management, public procurement is important, and these things are often ignored. The importance is not always recognized. And from my experience, I can share with you, ladies and gentlemen, that there is a perception that with regard to public procurement, the main issue is corruption. But from my experience, I have felt that the main issue is lack of capacity. Preparation of bid documents, then tender evaluation, and dealing with the contractors or service providers professionally. These things are very important. So for improving governance, we had to pay due attention to economic governance and these practical issues. And also the environment challenges, I will not elaborate because this is well understood. Then coherence and coordination. Coordination is a big problem for any big organization. and the government is probably the biggest organization in many countries, of course in Bangladesh. So what happens on many occasions, the vision of the leadership and the policies do not cascade down properly. So different ministries, we have so many ministries. It's a unitary system, so we have to have many ministries and hundreds of agencies, thousands of field offices. So different ministries interpret government priorities or government policies in different manners. So how to ensure coherence and improve coordination is a big problem in with regard to governance. Then civil service to ensure or promote professionalism. I mean, put due emphasis on meritocracy, career planning, performance, service orientation. This is also, I just suggest that there is lack of professionalism in civil service, but what I suggest is there is scope for enhancing professionalism in civil service to improve governance. The motivation and incentives are more important for the civil service. And finally, partnership. We have partnership, as I mentioned, but there's scope for further strengthening the partnership. Partnership with civil society, NGOs, media, and private sector. In Bangladesh, we have media are absolutely free. And of course, there's an issue whether there are two issues: freedom and whether the media are free and whether they're responsible or not. So there's two interrelated but sometimes conflicting issues. But the point is, how to deal with media is critically important for those who govern, the holders of the political office and also the civil servants. There was a time when civil servants were not required to deal with the media, but now you can avoid it. But if you cannot deal with the media effectively, then probably you cannot deliver. That's the point. Now, how we responded. I have already referred to the Vision 2021, Variables Perspective Plan, and the 5-year plans. And this vision is being implemented through 5-year plans. We have made reforms, anti-corruption laws, made the commission independent, and they do not require any approval of the government for for investigation, prosecution, etc. In 2009, we passed this Right to Information Act, and we have set up a commission. And also in 2009, we set up this National Human Rights Commission Act. Of course, there was an ordinance before that, but the elected government owned it, both these things, the Right to Information Act and the Human Rights Commission Act. And we have a vibrant...
In other words, we did the ordinance. Explain that.
Yeah, the strong, vibrant Human Rights Commission. And in e-governance, e-business, probably we have made good progress. Because Digital Bangladesh is vision of the government. We put a lot of emphasis in this area, on this area. In 2009, we put in place this ICT policy. And now, if you look at the figures, now tele-density in Bangladesh is 78.39%, which is quite high. And internet density is 27.83. And Bangladesh also received a number of international awards for our achievements in ICT. And the other things, in 2012, the cabinet approved the National Integrity Strategy, which is, I should say, a comprehensive agenda of governance. And they have spoken about Civil Service Act, which is under process, is now considered by the Parliament. We had also this into the Citizens Charter. First and second generation, in a sense, initially these charters were prepared at the top, and the field officers were required to follow. Now, in this second generation, it said that at this phase, these citizens' charters are being developed locally in consultation with the local communities, the citizens. We are also going to, in limited manner, we have introduced the grievance redress mechanism, but we are going to expand it throughout the country. And at union level, union is the lowest tier of local government. We have 4,500 unions, like parish councils of UK, and we have digital centers. These are located at the local body office, but run by the private entrepreneurs, micro entrepreneurs. And it's a requirement that there should be two entrepreneurs, one man, another woman. Together they run on commercial basis, and the local government institutions provides them with the space. And we have 5,275, 4,547 rural digital centers and 728 urban. Because we started with the rural centers, and recently we have expanded to the urban areas. Now, a bit more about the NIS, or National Integrity Strategy. This was approved by the Cabinet 2012. It was prepared in accordance with the Constitution and in line with the UNCSC, United Nations Convention Against Corruption. It's a requirement during your tenure, the tenure of the Qatar government. You signed this UNCSC. Although that was the background, but when our cabinet approved it, they approved it as its own document, as a government-owned document. And it aims to prevent corruption and promote integrity in national life. It's a national strategy, and it recognizes key state and non-state institutions, identifies major challenges with regard to integrity, and makes some recommendations and presents time-bound action plan for implementation for each institution. 11 institutions have been identified, both state and non-state. The non-state institutions include the private sector, the NGOs, the media, and also political parties. And it is mentioned in the document that executive organ will pioneer implementation. So also, although the National Integrity Strategy covers all the institutions, state and non-state, the society as a whole, but who should start? The executive organ, particularly the civil service, the public service. And there's a monitoring and evaluation mechanism put in place. There's an advisory council, national council, headed by the Prime Minister, then executive committee of the National Integrity Advisory Council, headed by the Finance Minister. Finance Minister because of two reasons. One, he is Finance Minister. Second, he has long experience, as you mentioned. He is now 82. He joined the government in 1954.
56.
Oh, 56. Sorry. Mr. Kibriya joined in 54, right? Mr. Mohit joined in 56. Okay. Then there's Secretariat. Secretariat is located at the Cabinet Office. The Cabinet Office is expected to provide secretarial assistance towards this monitoring and implementation. It's not the job of the Cabinet Office only to implement NIS. It's the job of each and every ministry and institution. But Cabinet Division is there to coordinate, to monitor implementation. Recently we have introduced this government performance management system. Now we are focusing on it. And we drew lessons from different countries, including our neighbor India. They started in 2009 when Dr. Trivedi was picked up to head this performance management unit in the Cabinet Secretariat. And we have introduced the system. It's a results-based government performance management system. The purpose is it's a paradigm shift from process orientation to result orientation. And we need to measure performance. Performance has to be measurable, and that should be evaluated on a regular basis. That's the purpose. And we expect that this implementation of this government performance management system will speed up implementation of government's policies and programs, and also improve the efficiency, accountability, and service delivery of the ministries and agencies. The ministries in turn are expected to sign performance agreement with the agencies. We in fact started in the last financial year. In Bangladesh, financial year starts in July and ends in June. We started in last financial year, and we signed 49 annual performance agreements. Annual performance agreements are at the core of the government performance management system. The secretary of each ministry or division signed the annual performance agreement with the cabinet secretary. The secretary signed it on behalf of the ministry and the minister in charge, and cabinet secretary signed it on behalf of the prime minister. And while preparing this performance agreement, the ministry is expected to take into consideration the development priorities of the government, the allocation of business, because in the allocation of business it's mentioned which ministry will do what. So one should not cross the boundary. They should be confined to their own mandate. And also ministry budget framework, the available resources. Each APA contains a few things: the vision, mission, major functions, and strategic objectives of the ministry division. We have seen from experience that these things also, improves the understanding of the functionaries. There are many people who actually do not actually understand the mandate of the ministry properly. So what the ministry is supposed to do, what is supposed to deliver. So that enhances the understanding. So these things help a lot. Then priority activities to achieve the objectives, the performance indicators, the measurement mechanism, measurement of performance. And here it also mentioned that for example, the energy division is mandated to ensure smooth supply of petroleum products. But they need assistance of other ministries. For example, Ministry of Railways, because they need the rail link to carry these petroleum products. So in each APA is categorically mentioned which functions can be done by themselves and for which functions they need assistance of other ministries. And those activities are reflected in the APA of that ministry. In the APA of Railway Ministry is mentioned that it has to provide assistance to the Energy Ministry in the transportation of fuel, like this. The expected outcomes. Now, how we do it? There is a National Committee on Government Performance which is headed by Cabinet Secretary. There are permanent members who are more involved in the process, like the Finance Secretary and the Planning Secretary, etc. And the respective secretary is also a member. And there is a technical committee headed by Secretary Coordination Reforms in the Cabinet Office, and ministries are represented by normally additional secretaries. So the first draft is made by the ministry itself, is sent to the technical committee. Technical committee sends it back with some comments. Then it is approved by the minister in principle. It comes to the National Committee for final endorsement. Finally, it's a product of the ministry. It has to be owned by the ministry and signed between the Cabinet Secretary and the respective secretary. And the results are placed to the Prime Minister, and the Cabinet Division is mandated to monitor implementation. Now, I have focused on two of these things. One is this National Integrity Strategy and this Government Performance Management System. If you are interested, I can take questions, comments on this. Now, toward the end of my presentation, sorry, I forgot to show this in the ways forward. Now, this will sound a bit theoretical, but I have mentioned here, not as an academician, from practical perspective. Consolidation of democratic institutions is a big challenge, because institutions are there, but we need to strengthen them, to consolidate. And these things also sound a bit rhetorical, but this is reality. then widening and deepening of the consultative process. Consultation is a requirement reflected in the rules of business. It was not there in the past, but this has been incorporated. But the quality of consultation is very important. One, it should be wide. We should involve as many stakeholders as possible for consultation. And secondly, the consultation has to be meaningful. Then strengthening the local government system, because service delivery at local level largely depends on local government institutions. And unless you have these elected bodies, you can ensure accountability in full. It's a requirement of the Constitution, but we are yet to implement it fully. Devolution of administration. If you strengthen local government institutions, that will be political sort of devolution. We also need devolution at the administrative on the administrative side. And professionalizing civil service to put more emphasis on merit and performance, and also proper implementation of NIS and GPMS. The response we have received so far with regard to government performance management system is very encouraging. It's more than expectation. But NIS is more challenging because it involves in political sort of issues. But we have decided to implement NIS slowly but steadily. Steadiness will be more important because we want to jump on it, then probably we'll lose it because that has to be politically viable as well. Finally, the government has to play a pioneering role in implementing NIS and improving governance because NIS involves all institutions, state and non-state, but who will lead, who will pioneer? The government, of course. The government has to set some example and also provide all support. And it's there reflected in the NIS document that government has to provide assistance to the non-government institutions in implementing NIS. Then civil service is the main instrument of the government in policy making and implementation. So the capacity of the civil servant, the commitment of the civil servant, the commitment of the civil service are also important. But I am happy to share with you that in Bangladesh, civil service plays a significant role in ICT, right to information, NIS and GPMS, even Administrative Reforms Initiative. The common perception is that civil service is reluctant or to change and also resistant to change. But in Bangladesh, I do not claim that it used its full potential, but in many cases it demonstrated its positive attitude towards changes. And in some cases, it played a very proactive role. If you take the example of this ICT, Digital Bangladesh, some of your colleagues know about it, the civil servants played a very instrumental role. And also this government performance management system, civil service, even with regard to this Civil Service Act, the civil servants were more eager to make some reforms in the system. And we have seen the bureaucracy's proactive role can help strengthen and sustain political will. Because for any change is not a reform, of course. Reform is something stronger and qualitative than change. And any reforms need a strong political will and sustained political will. But if the bureaucracy is supportive, then this helps strengthen and sustain political will. If the bureaucracy is not supporting, then political will doesn't work. So this is what I wanted to share with you, ladies and gentlemen. Yes. Now.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Cabinet Secretary, for what was a very detailed and comprehensive analysis of the issues, problems, and some suggested solutions from the angle of governance.